At the year-end party, my daughter said, "Try not to talk too much so you don't ruin the mood." But it was my speech that made everyone cry. And remember who never let anything be missing. Your presence here means so much to me. Watch until the end and leave a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far my story has reached. Please try not to talk too much, Mom. I don't want to create any awkward moments. My daughter Rebecca's words hit me like a slap across the face. I stood in my kitchen, phone pressed against my ear, feeling the blood drain from my cheeks. I was 65 years old, and my own child was asking me to keep quiet at the family's year-end celebration, a gathering that I had helped fund, in the home I had helped her buy. I don't understand, I stammered, my fingers tightening around the phone. What do you mean, not talk too much? Rebecca sighed, that familiar exasperated sound I'd grown used to hearing over the last few years. Mom, Walter's parents will be there. They're very sophisticated people. I just want everything to go smoothly. Sophisticated people. The implication was clear. Unlike me, the simple mother who had only managed to get a high school diploma before life threw its hardest punches my way. I see, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I wouldn't want to embarrass you in front of your in-laws. Mom, that's not what I meant, Rebecca protested, but her voice lacked conviction. It's just, you know how you get sometimes telling all those stories about the old days. The old days. She made it sound like ancient history, something dusty and irrelevant. Those old days were the years I'd worked 2 jobs after her father walked out on us when she was only 8. Those old days were when I'd scrubbed floors at the hospital during the day and waited tables at night so that she and her brothers could have new school clothes and band instruments and college applications. I understand, Rebecca, I said quietly. I'll keep to myself. After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen table, the same sturdy oak piece that had seen 25 years of family dinners, homework sessions, and late-night heart-to-hearts. I ran my fingers along a groove worn into the wood, remembering how Rebecca had accidentally scratched it with her science project in 7th grade. She'd cried, thinking I'd be mad about the table. But furniture could be replaced. Moments with my children couldn't. Now my daughter was married to Walter Reynolds, whose family owned half the real estate in our town. She lived in a house with marble countertops and hired help. She had become someone I barely recognized, someone who was apparently embarrassed by her mother. The family gathering was supposed to celebrate Walter's recent promotion, but it had morphed into a year-end celebration combining Thanksgiving and an early Christmas. Rebecca had insisted on hosting it at their house instead of my cozy bungalow, which had been our tradition for decades. It just makes more sense, Mom, she'd explained. We have more space, and it's easier for Walter's parents. I opened my photo album, flipping through pages of memories. There was Rebecca at her high school graduation, her eyes shining with pride as I stood beside her in my best dress, the one I'd saved 3 months to buy just for that occasion. There were the boys, Michael and Tim, fishing at the lake during that rare weekend when I wasn't working. There I was, much younger, with dark circles under my eyes but a determined smile as I cut the ribbon on the little house I'd finally managed to buy after 10 years of renting. I'd raised 3 children on my own after Frank left us for his 20-something secretary. I'd never missed a parent-teacher conference, even if it meant losing sleep before a double shift. I'd helped with homework, bandaged knees, and chased away monsters under the bed. I'd done it all while barely keeping our heads above water financially. And now my daughter wanted me to be quiet because I might not fit in with her fancy new family. The tears came then, hot and angry. But I quickly wiped them away. Janet Porter didn't have time for self-pity. Never had. My phone rang again. It was my youngest, Tim. Hey Ma, his warm voice came through. You okay? Rebecca mentioned she called you about the party. I took a deep breath. I'm fine, honey. Just getting ready for the big gathering. There was a pause. Mom, you know how Beck gets with Walter's family around. Don't let it bother you. It doesn't, I lied. Everyone has their own way of doing things. After we hung up, I walked to my bedroom closet and pulled out the dress I'd bought for the occasion. Nothing fancy, but a classic navy blue that brought out my eyes. Rebecca might want me to be invisible, but I wasn't about to fade away entirely. I was Janet Porter. I had kept this family together through the hardest times. And no one, not even my own daughter, was going to make me forget that. The morning of the gathering, I woke before dawn. Old habits die hard when you've spent decades rising early for work. I sat at my kitchen window, watching the darkness slowly give way to light, sipping coffee from the mug my grandson Jamie had painted for me last Mother's Day. My mind drifted back to another early morning 27 years ago. Rebecca had been 10, Michael 12, and little Tim just 7. It was the morning after Frank left, taking our savings and leaving nothing but a hastily scribbled note on the kitchen counter. I've got to get out. This life isn't what I wanted. I'd sat at this same table, terror gripping my heart, wondering how I'd feed 3 children on my receptionist's salary. I remember Rebecca coming downstairs, her hair in messy braids, eyes puffy from crying after I'd told them their father was gone. "Are we going to be okay, Mommy?" she'd asked, her small hand reaching for mine. "We'll be better than okay," I'd assured her, swallowing my own fear. "We have each other. That's what matters most." I'd meant those words. And I'd spent the next 20 years proving them, picking up a second job, then putting myself through night classes to become a medical billing specialist. I climbed from receptionist to office manager at Dr. Miller's practice, working extra hours whenever they were offered. I'd stretched every dollar, clipped every coupon, mended clothes instead of buying new ones. I set down my coffee and moved to the kitchen counter, where I'd laid out the ingredients for my famous pecan pie, Rebecca's favorite as a child. As I mixed the filling, another memory surfaced. Rebecca at 16, sitting at this counter, sobbing because we couldn't afford the designer prom dress she wanted. "Everyone else will have beautiful dresses. I'll look like a charity case." Instead of getting angry, I'd stayed up 3 nights in a row after my shifts, sewing her a dress from a pattern and some midnight blue satin I'd found on sale. When she tried it on, even she had to admit it was beautiful. "You're amazing, Mom," she'd said, hugging me tight. Where had that girl gone? When had she started measuring worth by brand names and bank accounts rather than love and sacrifice? As I slid the pie into the oven, my phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Got your back today, Ma. Love you." My eldest had always been perceptive. He'd seen how Rebecca had changed after marrying Walter, how she'd slowly distanced herself from her humble beginnings, as she once referred to our life together. I checked the time. Still 5 hours before I needed to leave for Rebecca's house. I decided to sort through some old papers, something I'd been putting off for months. In my small home office, I opened the filing cabinet and pulled out a folder marked Education. Inside were the application forms I'd filled out for community college when I was 45, dreaming of finally getting my nursing degree. I'd been accepted too. But that was the year Tim needed orthodontic work that insurance wouldn't cover, and Michael's car had broken down, leaving him unable to get to his first real job unless I helped with repairs. So I deferred my acceptance, then deferred again the next year. And eventually, the dream had faded away, replaced by the more immediate needs of my family. I didn't regret it, not really. My children had been my priority always. But sometimes I wondered what my life might have been like if I'd had the chance to follow my own dreams. The doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. It was Marge from next door, bringing over some cookies for my grandkids. "All ready for the big fancy party?" she asked, settling at my kitchen table as I poured her some coffee. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, trying to sound cheerful. Marge had been my neighbor for 30 years. She'd watched my kids grow up, brought casseroles during tough times, and shared both tears and laughter with me. "You know," she said, studying my face, "Rebecca called me yesterday. Wanted to know if I could pick up some special kind of cheese for the party. Something imported." I raised an eyebrow. "She didn't mention that to me." "No," Marge said carefully. "She also mentioned the seating arrangements. Said she put me at the table with you and some of Walter's aunt's friends." My stomach tightened. "The family table." Marge looked uncomfortable. Honey, I don't think we're at the family table. The realization stung more than I wanted to admit. Rebecca hadn't just asked me to keep quiet. She'd physically separated me from the rest of the family. Put me at the equivalent of the kids' table at Thanksgiving. I see, I said, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. Marge reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Janet Porter, I've known you since your kids were in diapers. You worked yourself to the bone to give them everything they have now. Don't you let anyone, especially not that daughter of yours, make you feel small. I nodded, blinking back tears. And if you ask me, Marge continued, her voice fierce with loyalty, it's about time someone reminded Rebecca exactly who made it possible for her to become Mrs. High and Mighty Reynolds. After Marge left, I stood in my kitchen, the scent of pecan pie filling the air. The hurt was still there, sharp and insistent. But something else was brewing alongside it, a quiet determination. My daughter might be ashamed of me, might try to hide me away in a corner with the other embarrassing relatives. But I had nothing to be ashamed of. Every line on my face, every callus on my hands, told the story of a mother's love and sacrifice. I thought about what Marge had said, about reminding Rebecca of who I was, who we had been as a family before designer labels and country club memberships. Maybe it was time for my daughter to remember where she came from. Not with anger or accusations, but with the simple truth. The timer on the oven beeped. The pie was ready, perfectly golden and fragrant. Just like I'd made for every birthday, every celebration, every moment that mattered in our family's history. I carefully placed it in the carrier I'd used to transport it to Rebecca's house. One way or another, this gathering was going to be memorable. And maybe, just maybe, it would be the beginning of healing something that had been broken for far too long. Rebecca's house looked like something from a magazine spread. Christmas lights outlined the roofline of the sprawling colonial, and professionally arranged wreaths hung on each window. As I pulled into the circular driveway, I noticed the luxury cars already parked there. Sleek, shiny vehicles that probably cost more than my house. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. Despite the knot in my stomach, I'd taken extra care with my appearance. Subtle makeup, hair freshly styled, my best pearl earrings. I might be relegated to the outer circle, but I'd face it with dignity. Balancing the pecan pie in one hand, I rang the doorbell. A young woman in a black uniform answered. Rebecca had hired servers for the occasion. Mrs. Porter, she asked politely, please come in. Everyone is gathering in the main living room. I followed her through the marble-floored entryway, past the 12-foot Christmas tree that must have cost a fortune. The house smelled of pine and expensive candles, nothing like the cinnamon and vanilla scents that had always filled my home during the holidays. Oh, let me take that to the kitchen, the server said, reaching for my pie. I hesitated before handing it over. It's pecan. My daughter's favorite. The woman nodded with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. I doubted Rebecca had mentioned anything about family recipes to the catering staff. In the expansive living room, about 30 people mingled, champagne flutes in hand. I immediately spotted Michael across the room, and the relief on his face when he saw me made my heart warm. At least one of my children was still genuinely happy to see me. Ma, he said, making his way over and embracing me tightly. At 40, Michael had his father's height but my eyes. He'd married his college sweetheart, Linda, and they had 2 wonderful children. Despite his success as an architect, he'd never forgotten where he came from. You look beautiful, he said, stepping back to look at me. Flattery will get you everywhere, I joked, though I was grateful for his kindness. Rebecca spotted us from across the room, where she stood with Walter and an older couple I assumed were his parents. She whispered something to Walter, then made her way over, her high heels clicking on the hardwood floor. Mom, you're here, she said, air-kissing my cheek. She looked stunning in a red cocktail dress that probably cost more than I spent on clothes in a year. I see you've found Michael. Hard to miss him, I said lightly. He's the tallest one here. Rebecca's smile tightened slightly. Come meet Walter's parents. They've been looking forward to seeing you again. That was a polite fiction. I'd met the elder Reynolds exactly once, at Rebecca and Walter's wedding 5 years ago. They'd barely acknowledged me then, clearly finding their son's choice of in-laws disappointing. As we approached, I noticed Mrs. Reynolds, Eleanor, eyeing my dress with a quick, assessing glance. "Janet, lovely to see you again," she said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. "Rebecca tells us you're still working at that doctor's office." "Retired now," I replied evenly. "After 27 years. How quaint," Eleanor said. "To stay with one employer so long." Before I could respond, Rebecca jumped in. "Mom was very dedicated. Walter, why don't you get Mom a drink?" Walter, a handsome man with a permanently distracted expression, nodded and wandered off toward the bar. "Rebecca was just telling us about the children's private school applications," Mr. Reynolds said, clearly eager to change the subject. "Quite competitive these days." As they launched into a discussion about the merits of various prestigious preschools for my 4-year-old grandson Jamie, I felt myself fading into the background, exactly as Rebecca had wanted. Walter returned with a glass of white wine, which I accepted with a murmured thanks. I scanned the room for Tim, my youngest, but couldn't spot him. Then I felt a tug on my dress and looked down to see Jamie grinning up at me, his missing front tooth making him look adorably mischievous. "Grandma!" he exclaimed, wrapping his arms around my legs. "I missed you." I bent down to hug him properly. "I missed you too, sweetie. Where have you been hiding?" "In the playroom with the nanny," he replied. "But I sneaked out to find you. Did you bring cookies?" I laughed. "Not cookies this time, but I did bring your favorite pie." Jamie's eyes lit up. "Pecan. Can I have some now?" Rebecca frowned. "Jamie, you know dessert comes after dinner. And where is Miss Patty? She's supposed to be watching you." As if summoned, a harried-looking young woman appeared. "There you are, Jamie." "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Reynolds. He just slipped away when I was helping Sarah with her dress." "It's fine, Patty," Rebecca said, though her tone suggested it wasn't. "Please take him back to the playroom until dinner is ready." "But I want to stay with Grandma," Jamie protested, clinging to my hand. I saw the conflicting emotions on Rebecca's face. Irritation at the disruption to her perfectly orchestrated event, reluctance to make a scene in front of her in-laws. "I can watch him," I offered. "We could catch up while you finish greeting your guests." Before Rebecca could respond, Eleanor interjected. "Children should be with their peers at these gatherings. Build social skills." She gave Jamie a stiff smile. "Run along now, young man." Jamie's lower lip trembled slightly, but years of conditioning to behave properly in front of his other grandparents won out. He gave me a final hug before allowing Patty to lead him away. I watched him go, feeling a familiar ache. Rebecca was raising her children in a world I barely recognized. A world of nannies and private schools and perfectly coordinated outfits. A world where grandmothers were kept at a distance unless needed for free babysitting. "Mom," Rebecca said quietly, "why don't I show you to your table? Dinner will be starting soon." As I suspected, my assigned seat was at a table in the far corner of the dining room, with Marge and several elderly relatives of Walter's I'd never met. Not with my children. Not with my grandchildren. Just as far from the center of attention as Rebecca could place me without actually seating me in another room. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral, though inside I felt a deep sadness. How had the little girl I'd raised, the one who once needed me for everything, become this woman who seemed ashamed of my very existence? Dinner was an elaborate affair with 5 courses served by the uniformed waitstaff. My table companions were pleasant enough, though conversation was stilted. Walter's great-aunt Martha was hard of hearing, and his cousin's elderly father-in-law seemed more interested in the prime rib than socializing. Marge kept shooting me sympathetic glances across the table. From my corner vantage point, I could observe the main table where Rebecca, Walter, and their children sat with the Reynolds and Tim's family. My youngest son caught my eye several times, his expression apologetic. His wife, Amy, seemed uncomfortable with the arrangement too, whispering something to him that made him frown and glance at Rebecca. Michael and his family had been placed at a middle table, not quite inner circle, but not exiled like me. He'd tried to protest when he realized where I'd been seated, but I'd squeezed his arm and told him not to make a fuss. This wasn't the time or place. As the dinner plates were being cleared, Walter stood and tapped his glass with a spoon. The room quieted. "I want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate with us tonight," he began, his voice confident from years of corporate presentations. "It's been an incredible year for us. My promotion to senior partner, Rebecca's interior design business taking off, and the children's achievements. We're blessed to have such a supportive family." He raised his glass. "To family and to continued success in the new year." Everyone echoed the sentiment, glasses raised. I sipped my wine, trying to ignore the omission. Not once had Walter acknowledged the role I'd played in his wife's success, how my babysitting had allowed Rebecca to build her client base in those early years when they couldn't afford childcare. Mr. Reynolds stood next, launching into a speech about legacy and the importance of proper foundations for success. "It's about having the right connections, the right education, the right influences," he said, nodding approvingly at his son and daughter-in-law. "Some people never get ahead because they don't understand that." I felt Marge tense beside me, recognizing the thinly veiled classism in his words. I placed a calming hand on her arm, though my own heartbeat had quickened. "And our grandchildren," Eleanor added, "are fortunate to have these advantages from the start. Proper guidance is so crucial." The implication hung in the air, that my grandchildren needed proper guidance to overcome their mother's humble background. I felt a flash of anger but swallowed it down. Rebecca was watching me anxiously from across the room, silently pleading with me not to react. I might have let it pass if not for what happened next. Little Jamie, who had been fidgeting in his seat during the grown-up speeches, suddenly piped up in that clear, carrying voice that only children possess. "But what about Grandma Janet? She made Mommy who she is." A hush fell over the room. All eyes turned to Jamie, then to me, then to Rebecca, whose face had flushed crimson. "Jamie, honey, adults are talking now," Rebecca said, her voice strained. "Remember what we discussed about speaking when spoken to." But Jamie wasn't deterred. "But you said Grandma Janet worked really hard so you could go to college. You said she's the strongest person you know. How come nobody's saying thank you to her?" The silence deepened. I could almost feel Rebecca's mortification from across the room. Walter looked blank, as if unsure how to respond to this unscripted moment. Eleanor's mouth had pinched into a tight line of disapproval. Tim cleared his throat. "The kid's right, Beck. Mom deserves some recognition tonight too." Rebecca's eyes darted around the room, trapped between her loyalty to me and her desperate desire to maintain her carefully constructed image. "Of course," she finally said, her voice artificial. "Mom has always been supportive." Supportive. Such a bland, empty word for the woman who had sacrificed everything for her children. I felt something inside me splinter. Not in anger, but in a kind of sorrowful revelation. My daughter was ashamed of me. Not just of my plain speaking or simple background, but of the very sacrifices that had allowed her to become who she was. Jamie, sensing the tension but not understanding it, looked confused. "Did I say something wrong?" he asked, his lower lip trembling. "No, sweetheart," I said, finding my voice at last. "You didn't say anything wrong." I stood slowly, feeling every eye in the room upon me. I hadn't planned to speak, had promised Rebecca I wouldn't draw attention to myself. But Jamie's innocent question had changed everything. "I'd like to say something if that's all right," I said, my voice quiet but steady. Rebecca's eyes widened in alarm. Walter's parents exchanged glances. But before anyone could object, Michael raised his glass. "We'd love to hear from you, Mom," he said firmly. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for my water glass. I'd never been comfortable with public speaking. Had always been happy to work behind the scenes. But sometimes silence costs too much. When my husband left me with 3 young children and no money, I made a promise to myself that my children would never go without, that they would have every opportunity one could possibly give them. The room was utterly still now. I could see the Reynolds shifting uncomfortably, but I continued. I worked 2 jobs for 15 years. I got by on 4 hours of sleep most nights. I missed my own brother's wedding because I couldn't afford to take the time off. But I never missed a parent-teacher conference. I never missed a band concert or a baseball game. And I never ever let my children see how scared I was sometimes, how close to the edge we lived. My eyes found Rebecca's. She was perfectly still, her expression unreadable. I'm not telling you this for sympathy or praise. I'm telling you because that's what family means to me. It means you do whatever it takes to help the people you love succeed. It means you take pride in their accomplishments, even when they outgrow you. Jamie was watching me intently, his small face serious. Tim and Michael were both nodding slightly. But real success, I concluded softly, isn't measured in promotions or possessions. It's measured in kindness, in gratitude, in remembering where you came from and who helped you along the way. I raised my glass. To family, all of family. The perfectly polished parts and the rough edges too. Because without both, none of us would be who we are today. For a moment no one moved. Then Tim stood, raising his glass. To Mom, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Michael joined him. To Mom. One by one, others began to stand. Amy, Linda, Marge, even some of Walter's relatives. Tears glistened in several eyes. Rebecca remained seated, her face a battlefield of emotions. But little Jamie slipped from his chair and ran across the room to me, throwing his arms around my waist. I love you, Grandma, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. You make the best pie and tell the best stories. And in that moment, as I embraced my grandson while the room looked on, I knew I had finally, truly broken the silence. The moments after my impromptu speech seemed to stretch into eternity. Jamie's small hand remained firmly in mine as conversation slowly resumed around us, though with a different quality than before. Less artificial, more genuine. Several of Walter's relatives approached me with warm smiles and kind words. That was beautiful, Mrs. Porter, Walter's aunt said, her eyes misty. Reminds me of my own mother. She worked at a laundry to put all 5 of us through school. Walter's cousin nodded. We forget sometimes, don't we? Where we all really come from. I thanked them, touched by their sincerity. Even Eleanor Reynolds seemed affected, though she maintained her composure. She approached with measured steps, her husband at her side. That was quite moving, she said, her voice not quite as crisp as before. I suppose we've been rather focused on appearances tonight. Mr. Reynolds cleared his throat. Your daughter has done remarkably well for herself. That speaks volumes about her upbringing. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was an acknowledgement. Perhaps the most I could expect from people who had spent a lifetime defining themselves by their social status. Tim appeared with his wife Amy, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. Way to bring the house down, Mom, he said with a grin that reminded me so much of his childhood self. I didn't mean to cause a scene, I said quietly. You didn't cause a scene, Amy insisted. You just spoke your truth. And everyone needed to hear it. Michael joined us, bringing me a fresh glass of wine. Cheers to the speech of the evening, he said, clinking his glass against mine. Better than any corporate keynote I've ever heard. I looked around for Rebecca but couldn't spot her in the crowd. A pang of worry shot through me. Had I gone too far? Had I embarrassed her after all? She's in the kitchen, Michael said, reading my thoughts as he always could. Give her a minute. This has been a lot for her to process. I nodded, understanding. Rebecca had spent years constructing a new identity for herself, one that meshed perfectly with Walter's world. My speech had reminded everyone, including her, of where she'd started. Jamie tugged at my hand. Grandma, can we have pie now? I told everyone it's the best pie ever. I smiled down at him. That's up to your mother, sweetheart. I think pie is exactly what we need right now, came a voice from behind me. I turned to find Rebecca standing there. Her eyes red-rimmed but her smile genuine. Without a word, she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me in a tight hug, the kind she used to give me before designer dresses and country club memberships came between us. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered against my ear. "I'm so sorry." I held her close, my own eyes filling with tears. "It's okay, honey." She pulled back, wiping quickly at her eyes. "No, it's not okay. Jamie was right. Everything I am, everything I have, it's because of you. And instead of being proud of that, I've been trying to hide it. To hide you." Her honesty stunned me. I hadn't expected such a direct acknowledgement, especially not in the middle of her carefully orchestrated event. "I got so caught up in fitting in with Walter's world," she continued, her voice low but steady. "I started believing that where we came from was something to be ashamed of, something to overcome. But it's not. It's something to celebrate." She turned to the room at large, raising her voice. "Everyone, my mother made her famous pecan pie. It's the same pie she used to make for every special occasion when I was growing up, even when money was tight and she had to work extra shifts to pay the electric bill." The simple admission that there had been times when paying the electric bill was a struggle was something the old Rebecca would never have voiced in this company. But the woman standing before me now was different, somehow both the daughter I remembered and someone new. "I'd like everyone to have a slice," she continued. "And while we enjoy it, I want to tell you a story about this amazing woman." She led me to the center of the room, keeping her arm linked with mine. The servers began distributing slices of my pecan pie on Rebecca's fine china plates. Walter appeared at his wife's side, looking somewhat bewildered by the turn of events but supportive nonetheless. "When I was 13, Rebecca began, her voice carrying across the now quiet room, "I desperately wanted to go to space camp. It cost $500, which might as well have been $1 million to us then. I knew we couldn't afford it, but I begged anyway." She paused, taking a deep breath. "Mom never said no. She just started selling hand-sewn quilts at the local farmer's market every weekend. For 3 months, on top of her regular jobs." I remembered those months. The pricked fingers, the late nights hunched over fabric squares, the Saturday mornings in the cold at the market. "I didn't realize until years later what that cost her," Rebecca continued. "Time, sleep, physical comfort. But I got to go to space camp. And that's just one example of hundreds." She turned to face me directly. "Mom, I planned this whole evening around Walter's promotion, around impressing his colleagues and family. I forgot the most important thing to celebrate, the love that made all of this possible in the first place." Tears spilled freely down my cheeks now. Around the room, I saw other eyes glistening as well. "So," Rebecca said, raising her glass, "I'd like to propose a real toast. To my mother, Janet Porter. The strongest, most selfless person I know. The woman who taught me what truly matters, even when I forgot the lesson for a while." To Janet, voices echoed around the room. As everyone sipped their drinks and commented on how delicious the pie was, Rebecca kept her arm linked with mine. "Is this okay?" she whispered. "I know it's putting you in the spotlight." I squeezed her hand. "It's more than okay, honey. It's perfect." For the first time all evening, I felt truly visible, not as an embarrassment to be hidden away, but as the mother who had given everything to see her children thrive. And as I looked around at the faces now regarding me with genuine respect and warmth, I realized something important. My voice, the one Rebecca had feared would create awkwardness, had instead created connection. The truth, spoken gently but firmly, had broken through walls I'd thought impenetrable. Sometimes silence is the easier path. But words, honest, heartfelt words, can build bridges across the deepest divides. The rest of the evening unfolded with a warmth I hadn't expected. Instead of the rigid formality that had characterized the gathering earlier, there was genuine laughter, real conversation. I found myself seated at the main table for dessert, between Jamie and Rebecca, sharing stories about when my children were young. Walter's colleagues asked about my years managing the medical office, genuinely interested in my perspectives on healthcare changes over the decades. Eleanor Reynolds, to my surprise, confided that her own mother had worked as a seamstress before her father's business took off. "We didn't always have money," she admitted quietly. "Richard prefers not to discuss those years. But sometimes I think we've done our children a disservice by hiding that part of our story." As the evening wound down, guests began to depart, many stopping to say goodbye to me specifically, thanking me for my words. It felt surreal after years of standing in the background at Rebecca's events, the mother who didn't quite fit into her daughter's curated new life. I was helping to gather empty dessert plates. Old habits die hard, when Walter approached me, looking somewhat hesitant. "Janet," he said, using my first name perhaps for the first time ever. "I wanted to apologize. I've been oblivious." I raised an eyebrow, waiting for him to continue. "Rebecca shared bits and pieces about her childhood over the years, but I never really understood what you did for them." He shifted uncomfortably. "My own upbringing was very different. Everything came easily." I nodded, remembering the stories Rebecca had told about Walter's privileged childhood, the vacation homes, the private schools, the trust fund. "You raised an incredible daughter," he continued. "And I think I've been encouraging her to forget the very qualities that made me fall in love with her in the first place. Her resilience, her appreciation for the simple things." It was perhaps the most genuine conversation we'd ever had. "Thank you, Walter," I said. "That means a lot." Later, as I was preparing to leave, Rebecca pulled me aside into her home office. "Mom, there's something I want to show you," she said, opening a drawer in her desk. She pulled out a worn envelope, yellowed with age. "I've kept this all these years." I recognized it immediately. A letter I'd written to her when she left for college, along with the $50 I'd managed to scrape together as spending money for her first month away from home. It wasn't much, but it had been everything I could give at the time. "I read it whenever I'm struggling," she said, her voice soft. "When I feel like I'm not good enough or when I'm facing something difficult." She handed it to me, and I saw my own handwriting, slightly faded but still legible. "My dearest Rebecca, as you start this new chapter, remember that you carry with you all the love and strength our family has built together. There will be hard days ahead. Days when you doubt yourself, when the path seems too difficult. On those days, remember who you are and where you come from. You come from a long line of women who never gave up, who found a way forward even when there seemed to be no path. That resilience lives in you too. I may not be able to give you everything your classmates have, but I've given you the tools to build whatever life you dream of. Your intelligence, your determination, your compassionate heart. These are the gifts that matter most. I am so proud of the woman you are becoming. Never forget that you are loved exactly as you are." "Mom," I looked up, my vision blurring with tears. "You kept this all this time." "Of course I did," Rebecca said, her own eyes shining. "Somewhere along the way, I got lost in trying to be someone else. I forgot who I really am and what really matters." She took a deep breath. "Things are going to be different now, Mom. I don't want Jamie and Sarah growing up thinking that appearances matter more than authenticity. I don't want them to ever be ashamed of where they come from." She reached for my hands. "I want them to know their grandmother, really know her. Not just as someone who visits occasionally, but as the heart of this family." "I'd like that," I said simply. 3 weeks later, I was surprised to receive an invitation in the mail. It was for a special dinner at Rebecca and Walter's house, but this one was different. In honor of Janet Porter, the elegant card read, "A celebration of family, resilience, and love." When I arrived, I was astonished to find not just my immediate family, but also old friends from the neighborhood, former colleagues from the medical office, even my favorite nurse from DR. Miller's practice who had retired to Florida years ago. "How did you find everyone?" I asked Rebecca in amazement. "Michael and Tim helped," she admitted. "We've been planning this for weeks. Everyone was so excited to come and celebrate you." The house had been transformed. Gone were the sterile designer touches that had made it look like a showroom. Instead, photographs covered the walls, old family pictures I hadn't seen in years. Me holding newborn Rebecca in the hospital. The kids at the lake during our one real vacation, their faces sunburned and happy. My graduation from high school, my parents beaming beside me. In the center of the dining room table sat a handmade quilt, pieced together from fabric scraps. "Do you recognize it?" Rebecca asked, her eyes bright with excitement. I ran my fingers over the familiar patterns. "These are from the children's old clothes," I said in wonder. "This square is from Michael's favorite t-shirt. And this one is from the dress I made you for your 16th birthday. I saved all those scraps you gave me over the years," she explained. "I've been taking quilting classes for the past month to put this together." Tim stepped forward. "And that's not all, Mom." He handed me an envelope. Inside was a certificate for the local community college. "It's for the nursing program," he said. "You always wanted to go back to school, remember? It's all arranged. Classes start in the spring." I stared at it in disbelief. "But I'm 65. And sharp as a tack," Michael countered. "The admissions counselor said they have several students in their 60s. It's never too late to fulfill a dream, Ma." The evening was filled with laughter, stories, and a sense of homecoming I hadn't felt in years. As I looked around at the faces of the people I loved most in the world, I realized that my unplanned speech at the Christmas gathering had done more than just remind Rebecca of her roots. It had given me back my voice, and with it, a whole new beginning. Later, as the party was winding down, Jamie crawled into my lap with a storybook. "Will you read to me, Grandma?" he asked. "Nobody does the voices like you do." "Of course, sweetheart," I said, opening to the first page. Rebecca sat down beside us, her arms slipping around my shoulders. "Read it loud, Mom," she said with a smile. "We all want to hear your voice." And so I did, without hesitation and without fear of taking up too much space or creating any awkward moments. Because sometimes, the voice that others try to silence is exactly the one that needs to be heard the most. In finding the courage to speak my truth that night, I hadn't just changed my relationship with Rebecca. I had reminded myself of who I was, not just a background figure in someone else's story, but the author of my own. At 65, I was beginning a new chapter. And this time, I would make sure my voice rang clear on every page. As spring approached, I found myself sitting in a classroom for the first time in nearly 5 decades, a student ID card with my name on it tucked into my wallet. Rebecca had insisted on buying me a new laptop and supplies. An investment in our family's future, she called it. On weekends I still babysat Jamie and Sarah, but things were different now. Rebecca and Walter often stayed too, asking questions about my classes, helping with assignments when I struggled with the technology. Our family dinners moved between my small house and their larger one without any hint of shame or hierarchy. The last time Rebecca called me before an event at her home, it wasn't to ask me to stay quiet. Instead, she said, "Mom, would you mind saying a few words at dinner? Everyone always listens when you speak." And that, perhaps, was the greatest gift of all, being not just seen but heard. All because I found the courage to break the silence, with love rather than bitterness, truth rather than accusation. Sometimes the most powerful words are the ones that cost us the most to speak. But once spoken, they can rebuild what was broken, and create something even stronger than before.